We are delighted to sit down today with Lance and Chrissy Walker, who are an amazing couple with their 4 kids who left the United States and moved to Belize to buy and fix up and run a jungle resort. We are delighted to hear from them directly from Belize. If you don't know where Belize is, it's a 3-hour flight south of Houston, or if you're in Cancun, Mexico, a 6-hour drive south of Cancun. It's its own little country. They'll tell us more about it, I'm sure. But we are delighted to sit down with them today. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. My name is Eric Orton.
My name's Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal development, family connection, and raising adult kids or parenting adult kids. So Chrissy and Lance, great to be with you today. Thanks for tuning in from the jungle. I'm just going to turn it over to you. I'm going to turn over to you for a second to just give us the overview, and then we'll start peppering you with cool questions because we're excited to hear what you've got to say today. So I'll let you guys take it for a few minutes.
Sounds great.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to share a little bit of our story, and it has been quite the journey that we've been on. Being here in Belize has been really a dream come true for us. It's been the culmination of so many different things over the years, and was a very purposeful decision for us to chase our dreams, live true to who we are, and not let fear hold us back from what we really wanted. And it has definitely been a wild ride, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of things where we sometimes look at each other and say, did that just happen? Like,
is this our life?
Is this really our life? But yeah, it's been amazing. My background personally is I'm a designer and a general contractor. We together as a couple bought and renovated several homes and then rented out those homes short term on Airbnb, and we just loved that. We've had a lot of businesses over the years. We found that was the one that we really felt so alive in and loved specifically to do together, and that was always the goal, was to be able to work together. And do you want to give your background?
Yeah, so first I'll just tell how we got connected. So a mutual friend connected Eric and I read a little bit about Eric and Emily's story and loved it. I love the idea of sailing around the world, maybe someday for us. But more than that, it was just the idea of, wow, my current life isn't really what I want it to be or what I expected. And I'm feeling kind of burned out with it. I'm going to go chase this other dream that really matters to me and that I know is going to be fulfilling, even if I fail. And that was what connected me to your story, Eric and Emily, and essentially what started off this new friendship. So thank you for having us. My background, I'm more of a business generalist. I've been a serial entrepreneur and done several ventures over the years, but we just kept coming back to every time that we worked together on a home renovation or a build or things like that. That's where we really connected as a couple, and enough that, we put the kids to bed, and instead of popping open Netflix, we'd pull open a floor plan and just pour over it together and get excited about which walls to move and where the furniture would go in the home. And so that was a passion of ours. And then health and wellness also became a passion of ours. So Chrissy has the BRCA2 gene mutation, which gives her a very high chance of breast cancer and ovarian cancer during her lifetime. Our son at 7 years old started having seizures. So what people call grand mal or generalized seizures. He had his first one at school, and the doctors told us, just got to put him on medicine. This isn't going to go away. And we were able to find a different way to help him through lifestyle and diet choices. And so, and then I've been an athlete for my whole life. So this idea of health and wellness and adventure and being able to really influence the outcome of your life and your health span is important to us, in both physical and mental health. So those are important parts of us, and we've seen challenges even this year, and how important it is for us to continue doing those things in life that help us to keep our heads on straight and keep our health and our vigor so that we have the energy to do what we need to do.
That's so great. I love that. Both the fact that you discovered how you enjoy working together. Emily and I, we like just picking paint colors is like major drama for us. And so
yeah, we use these like plain white
like
glass plates that look like paper plates because we could never like come to a decision on what we both
should
liked.
this chair be angled that way or this way? You know
No,
what?
but-
We can't work now.
No, but here's what I love. You've found so many places where you have overlap, and then you've just leaned into that and said, I think you figured out what a lot of people don't realize is that your environment influences so much the life you live and the habits that you have. And if you want to form different habits, so many times the quickest way to make that adjustment is by changing your environment. And when we were living aboard, I think we were at the island of Eustatia when we met this woman who had started her family in Texas, but moved to Statia because her son was diagnosed with autism and they wanted to medicate him, just kind of like what you're talking about, different situation. And so she was like, well, why don't we move to a place that has less of these like challenging sensory inputs? And he has really been thriving in a mainstream classroom there just by going to a place where the entire lifestyle and culture was just a little more simple, a little more relaxed, and a little less distracting. Mm-hmm.
Wow, love that.
Yes, our environment plays such a role. Yeah.
And I definitely want to come back to that because we're in a, like we were literally the doctor yesterday with our daughter Lily trying to go down a similar path to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, helping her get healthy without a lot of the more dramatic interventions that a lot of times get proposed.
We had to leave the allopathic path and go to something a little more functional that looks at what's specifically going on with you and what are all your triggers. And so we're all about to embark on that journey.
We're vibing clearly. Okay. When we first talked initially, Lance, you shared a little bit about the business that you were running prior to COVID, which was a graphic design and signage business. And yet it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't the thing you wanted to be doing. And but that business and how it played out, especially through COVID, I think led in some ways to what you're doing now. And if that's the case, you know, just we'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, tell us about the turning point.
Yeah, so there's kind of this overarching thing that I feel like has been a theme in our marriage and in our life. And we heard this story several years ago. It's kind of a Chinese parable of a man that has a horse, and everybody in the town comes and is like, "Wow, this horse is so amazing! You have the best horse!" And then the horse runs away, and everybody comes and says, "Oh man, that's so terrible! That's the worst thing that could ever happen. Can't believe this happened to you." And he says, "Oh, maybe it is, maybe it isn't." And as time goes on, the horse comes back and brings other horses with it, and everybody in the town comes by and says, "Wow, that's amazing! Now you have 5 horses. We can't believe your fortune." And he says, "Well, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't." And then as he's training these wild horses, one of them stomps on his son's leg and breaks his leg and maims his son. And everybody comes by and says, "That's the worst thing that could ever happen. That's so terrible. I'm sorry this happened to you." And again, he says, "Maybe it is, maybe it isn't." And then as his son is trying to heal from his injury, the Imperial Guard comes through town and says, "We're taking all able-bodied young men off to war. And many of you will die, but we need to protect our nation." And then, you know, they all go off to war, and everybody comes by and says how fortunate he is that his son doesn't have to go off to war. And he says again, "Well, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't." And so this has been a theme for us throughout our marriage and throughout our life. And I think you've hit on the one that for me has been the hardest. I put a lot of time and effort, energy, made a lot of sacrifices, a lot of sacrifices from Chrissy and from our family for me to be away from them, and financial commitment to that company. And I built it up to the point that it was profitable. We had 7-figure revenue and 6-figure profit in 2019, and I felt like, I finally felt like, finishing a marathon. And I was just kind of handing off the baton to my partner who was going to run the company, and Chrissy and I were going to work on her software company together. And then 3 months later, COVID hit, and it long story short, it just never recovered. I tried to rebuild it through other people. I didn't have the energy to get back in and do it myself. Didn't have the passion. And so from that point forward, it was like
and
this
during
thing.
that same time, I got pregnant, my 4th pregnancy, and I have something called hyperemesis gravidarum during my pregnancies, which is just this horrible sickness throughout, for about 30 to 34 weeks. So I was pretty much bedridden for about 4 months, and our house burned down. So actually the exact same
and
Yeah.
and our house burned down. So it was 3
Did you tell me that your house burned down?
I don't know that I told you that part.
Oh, that was really, really
you're
horrible.
like, was this a good thing or was this a bad thing?
Yeah, actually, yes, that was so true. So
It's like a blank canvas.
3 days after Christmas, I woke up, I found out I was pregnant. So we knew this horrible sickness was coming, and Lance was going to have to really carry our family through this time. And that very same afternoon, our house burned down.
Oh my word. Oh my word.
Well, yeah, you're like, oh man, sometimes I fantasize about our house burning down because I'm like, then we don't have any of these responsibilities.
Wow, that's dark.
No, you know what I'm saying, but because
sell it.
sometimes
Easier.
we get into a position where our stuff owns us instead of us owning
Yeah.
our stuff, and you can tell you're in that position when you're like, I wish all of this would just go away.
That's definitely true. And we did have all of our baby clothes, all of our childhood keepsakes, all of that
all my
burned.
track medals from college, all the everything that you like carry around with you that you think you might want someday.
It all burned. It all got ruined in the fire. And it does help you evaluate, what do I really value in this life? What really matters? And at the end of the day, that stuff just doesn't really matter. What mattered was we were all safe and no one got hurt in the fire, and we rebuilt. It was a long, very difficult few months, but the home ended up being beautiful and brand new. And
yeah, it's again a good lesson. It goes back to this parable of the guy with the horse, because that week, like, I'll never forget that week. We called the insurance company and they're like, because we had a duplex and we rented one side on Airbnb, and that came out in the discussion with him. And he said, well, actually, that sounds like it's not a covered activity on your policy. So now I'm looking at like, okay, my house just burned down, and this guy's telling me that my insurance isn't going to cover the loss. And about a week later, we got it resolved. They were like, okay, you when you set the policy, you weren't doing the short-term rentals, so the insurance company has decided to cover it, which sounds like a miracle to me, because insurance companies, I feel like, don't do that. If they have any way to wiggle out, they're going to do it.
And it ended up being a $430,000 claim.
Yeah, so it was. I mean, that would have been not insignificant, and so yes, it was very, very hard. Like, Chrissy was completely bedridden for the following 4 months, and sick for most of the pregnancy, and I was just kind of like trying to run my company that wasn't quite doing well yet, and take care of the other 3 kids that really needed a mom and a dad, but only had me. And but afterwards, we had a brand new, beautiful home. Everything was rebuilt.
A brand new, beautiful baby.
Brand new, beautiful baby. And long story short, that very hard time, it was so emotional and I was so down and so broken through that period of time that that was a big part of why I could not go back after COVID and rebuild the science and graphics company. And so I think if that hadn't happened, maybe I would have had the energy and I would still be doing something I am not really passionate about and don't really enjoy. And so sometimes it has to get bad enough and you have to get low enough that you're like, no, enough is enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't care if I fail. I have to go pursue something I really care about, and I have to go on a journey that is going to be enjoyable, even if the end result isn't what I had hoped for.
And when you're taking the safe option, the option you're not really passionate about, you don't care deeply about, you can fail doing that too. So why not fail doing something that you feel really deeply about, that while you're doing, even if you fail, you can still feel really alive.
Yeah.
Oh
I
man,
love this so much, guys.
Lance and Chrissy, listeners, they're
Boom.
coming to your house today. Because I was actually just reading this. Our friend York wrote an incredible, beautiful book called Ridiculously Okay, and all about the kind of practical art of letting go. And what I was just reading this morning is he was talking about how he had this big fear of death, and he realized that it isn't really death that we're afraid of. The thing that we're most afraid of is being our true self. And so we come up with all these other sort of things to distract us. Well, I have to take care of this problem, or I have to be busy over there, or I'm, doing something impressive right now. And it's really about becoming our true self. And it is so scary to go on a journey of discovering what am I really capable of. And and one other thing that I love about this is we always say, at least at our house, like, it doesn't really matter what you achieve. That's not what defines a heroic journey, right? What it matters is what you overcome, because the obstacles that you're willing to like crawl over to become your true self, those are what make it a heroic journey. And I think we've just heard here, like in the last 4 minutes, the craziest story of just gargantuan obstacles that you there was no way around it. Like, you had to go through those, but while you were in the middle of it, you were like, how are we going to come out on the other side? And you're like, we're going to be like a phoenix, right? We're not going to try to replicate the previous version of ourselves in a new house. Like, everything was reborn after that fire.
Yes.
But I think it's important it was like a long process, right? So the house burned down and the pregnancy, like, that's 2018. And it wasn't until 2023 that we were like, okay, we're going for it. Like, it was a long process of like, that was so crappy, and then trying to figure it out. So, and I love that you brought up the heroic journey, because I had a really, really, really hard time letting go of that thing that I had put so much into that I hated. And Chrissy brought up that exact thing about the heroic journey, and like, you have to view it a different way. You have to see it as something that helped you get to where you eventually wanted to go.
That was the path we had to take to get to where we are. And so looking back and regretting that path, to me, doesn't make sense, because that was the path that led us here. It was the rock bottom that we had to reach in order to have the courage to say, enough is enough. Yeah. We're going to go for it. We're going to sell everything and move to another country. Like, that takes a lot of courage to do that. But when you do hit the rock bottom like that, when you do live a life that isn't true to yourself, I think that it's the contrast. You have to have that contrast to know, this is not what I want. What do I really want?
I love it, guys. And I'm feeling it, because I know that the thing that led us to sailing and everything that came after it was, and Lance, you probably haven't gotten into this, in our book or anything like that, but it was a total business failure that led us there, because I was having a great time in New York, working in the theater industry, running and producing shows. And it wasn't until it all exploded and we lost everything that we and I didn't hate that life. It wasn't like it was bad, but I just thought I didn't want to go back to it. And
Yeah.
it just, anyway, just how I
But
think
it was a 4-year journey from
yeah, it
that
was.
like obstacle that later we could look at as a stepping stone. Like if that wouldn't have happened, the whole trajectory would be different. And I think our value system would be just a little bit different than it is. And it caused us to have similar conversations to you and to recalibrate. And we didn't immediately go, oh, well, good, now we can reinvent, but
Yeah, it doesn't happen like that in the moment. In hindsight, you can see it like that.
yeah, after we went on the journey the first time, we had this template for like, oh, we know what's going on here. We know fear is going to pop up over here. We know that we're going to come up with excuses. We know how we're going to reverse this. And we were able to move through the journey so much faster once we identified all the different parts. But the first time it was like, oh, that took us 4 years
So true. Wow.
to make the turnaround.
Amazing. Our journeys are really similar.
Yeah. So take us to that moment where you kind of said, what if we buy a resort in Belize? Like, how do how do you come to that moment from, so, because COVID has kind of demolished your business, or at least kind of eroded it. And you kind of just say, you know what, I'm done with this. And from there to saying, let's try and, first of all, where do you go window shopping for resorts, and and then making the decision to go for it. And I'm curious for myself, because we're not planning to buy a resort, but we're sort of doing some new things in a business space that's totally separate from this, that is, it feels scary to us. So we're really just like here to get free coaching.
I think you need to coach us. You're a few years ahead of our journey, but I would say, looking back, it was a series of small decisions that led us there. It wasn't like we were living in our house and woke up, kind of like you were saying it. We first decided to sell our duplex. It was, brand newly renovated, so we could command a much higher price for it. And we had decided, okay, we're going to build a wellness resort in Utah. And we're going to build a home in Midway for our family, kind of our forever home. So we bought a lot in Midway, and we're starting to, talk to some people about building our wellness resort. And we had a mutual friend, one of Lance's old business partners, that said, hey, this is sounding kind of familiar. Actually, you need to talk to Darren Hill, who wants to build a wellness resort in Belize. And I remember the first time Lance brought this to me, we had our plan. We were building in Utah, our forever home. And Lance says, oh yeah, we should go talk to this guy. He wants to build a resort in Belize. And I'm like, okay, that is not happening. There is no way. And then we went and met with Darren. And from that very first meeting, I think we both felt so good about him as a partner. And he shared his vision of this property in Belize that he had found 7 years prior. So he had been waiting a long time to find the right partner that could move here and make it happen. And we just, I don't know, I would say it really did feel like the stars kind of aligned. And 2 weeks later, we were down here. We fell in love with the property in a way we didn't expect. It's incredible. And we were decided from that point forward. So
yeah, there were still a lot of details to work out, and it took several months after that to work out those details. And we can tell you more about that journey, because there was a lot of hard in that journey. But those are the highlights. Like, we just kind of put one foot in front of the other, saying goodbye to our old life. And as we did that, and we started to look forward to embracing what we really wanted to do, and we had kind of talked about starting a health and wellness retreat or resort as like our retirement plan. Like, okay, when we retire, when we have enough money, when we have all the time and money in the world, never happens, right? But people think it's going to happen. And so we're like, hey, when that happens, then we'll go do this thing. And there came a point where we started talking about why are we waiting and how could we do it now instead of waiting. And as soon as we started opening up our minds and our hearts to that question, like how could we do it now instead of waiting, that's when the doors started to open.
They really did. I mean, when I say the stars aligned, that's what it felt like at every turn. And like Lance is saying, as soon as we had opened our hearts to it and had started taking these little steps to the life we really wanted, everything really did fall into place. Not that it wasn't without its challenges, because there were monumental challenges as well, but it did very much feel like we were being watched out for and everything was working out for our good.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge there's a spiritual aspect in finding your path in life, and there was for us. And however that looks for you, I think for us, there was a moment where we decided to pray about this opportunity, and it was long before we really had any idea whether it was going to work out for us. And
well, you heard how I reacted when he first told me about building a resort in Belize. I was like, that is like, the chances of that working out are so low. And then Lance suggested we have a couple's prayer. And so he prayed about it. And again, like, kind of embarrassed to admit, but I'm like rolling my eyes as he's praying about this, right? In our couple's prayer, like, oh, why is he even praying about this? The chances of this happening are so low. We hadn't even met the guy. What are the chances he would, be a good partner? And as Lance was praying about it, I just had an overwhelming feeling of peace. And then my next thought was, oh crap, we're moving to Belize.
You went straight there. You're like, okay, this is definitely happening.
I am being the skeptic, and he's approaching it with so much faith, and I'm being the skeptic. And then in that one simple prayer, it was, just so much peace brought to my heart. Like, yeah, this could be a really good path for you guys.
Okay, this is all so beautiful and wonderful. I want to back up to a few things that you've said. Lance, you talked about this was kind of the retirement plan down the road. But how can we do it now? Why do we have to wait? Is there a way to do it sooner? You talked about that the likelihood was low, and that there was a spiritual aspect to this, and that as you started to open your mind and your heart to how it could happen sooner, and this very unlikely thing that just feels far-fetched, how could it happen now instead of just relegating it to some future arbitrary circumstances or time in your life? I think this is a really important concept because so often we predetermine when we'll let good things come into our lives. And we say, now it's too soon for good things to happen to me. Or, it's too soon to do the things that I have to pay my dues. I have to eat my vegetables, however you want to describe it. But I love what you're saying about just being open to things happening in a sequence that is not typical in what we observe in most of each other's lives. And so I'm just curious to hear more about that thought of opening up to a different timeline and something that feels
a different location,
and also something that just feels improbable, because like you, I have just seen it happen in our own lives and so many of our coaching clients, where once you open up to it, man, things start to appear, solutions and ideas and people and resources. And so I'd love for you to just, and I know that it's no simple thing to say, oh, this is the other thing. I love that. Is it Daniel Hill? Is that his name?
Oh, Darren Hill. Yeah.
Darren Hill. Sorry, Darren. 7 years prior is like, oh, I've identified this property, and he's sitting on an idea for 7 years.
I love that.
And then you guys come along, and I love that there's just these timelines that spanned almost, I'm guessing that kind of like between conception and completion is probably a decade.
Yeah.
At least from him to where you guys are now. I'm guessing it's probably been 10 years since he first had his ideas.
Well,
So
and then when it was right, how fast it moved, because you guys were in Belize 2 weeks later.
Well, we didn't move to Belize. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were just here checking out the property, and then it was like almost
Yeah,
right,
just checking
but
it out.
you were
But
on a plane and you
you
went,
were
you
like,
went there.
now I'm standing in this location where I said we would never come. Right. And then it started like kind of.
So there's not a really concrete, clear question in there, but can you just talk some more about that, because that's some really
Yeah,
special stuff that you brought up.
It's a thing that's very hard for people to understand. So the more examples of it happening,
Yeah.
the more we can build a case for our listeners to trust this
No,
process.
it's true, and again, it's one of these things. It's easy to connect the dots looking back. It's hard to have the faith and like vision to see where it's going moving forward. But so the partner that connected us actually came from another failed venture that I was a part of, and because of the relationship that we built there, that both of us had a lot of trust because of how we handled that failure and working together. He had the confidence to recommend us to work with Darren. And then I had seen something online when Darren launched the company that he's running now, which is called RevRoad. It's a venture services firm. And
Darren's an incredible man, by the way.
yeah, amazing entrepreneur, just an incredible person. And when I saw him, I saw him a little video or something, and I was just like, that's a cool guy. I'd like to get to know him someday. And I never forgot about him. Never had the opportunity to meet him. Never like pursued it. But when my other friend said, "Hey, I want you to meet this guy, Darren Hill," I was like, I totally know about that guy. I randomly saw a video about him several years before. So there was that little bit, and then the part about like opening your mind and your heart, and then things start to flow into your life. Like those happened before I was ready to open my mind and my heart. But as soon as we were committed, we were going that direction. I started talking about it, right? Like, hey, this is what we're going to do. I had the confidence to actually tell people that's what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're headed this direction, and this is what we want to do. And then that's when John was like, hey, you need to talk to this guy, because otherwise nobody would have had any idea that that's what we wanted to do. And they wouldn't have known how to make the right connections or, tie us into their plans. So,
well, and I think for me, as you're talking about all those things, I think it goes back to believing that you are worthy and capable. And for me, that has been a big theme of this is, did I think that we could go and do this? And there have been times where I thought, that's crazy. Why could we think, we've never owned a hotel or a resort before. And we've certainly never done that in another country. Like, why do we think that we can do that? But, through meditation, through some personal spiritual work, really coming to a place where we believed we are capable of overcoming any obstacle that comes our way. And we're worthy of obtaining the dreams that we have. And I think a lot of times as human beings, we approach wanting to chase our dreams from a place of scarcity. I don't have everything that I need. I don't have the resources that I need. I don't have the time. I don't have the skills. But being able to really live in and really embody, I have everything I need and I am worthy and capable. I think it has to come from a place of that to be able to bring the rest of the things into your life.
I think so too. And I think trusting that what you need will emerge in the moment. Just like you started asking, how can we do this now? As you take that first step forward and you're like, oh, now I see this is what I need. Do I have that in my toolkit? And then usually once you're looking for it, it appears.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, not that you necessarily have everything you need. I think you're articulating it well, but that you believe in your ability to navigate your lack of whatever you lack, you can navigate and figure it out.
Yeah, there was another thing that you guys just reminded me of, selling our house, right? So I really didn't want to sell our house. We were making great money renting it on Airbnb. We were we were settled there, and I thought if we move, I just want to keep it, and we can even increase the income we have from it even more. And it was another one of these questions. Well, how could you, or what if? And Chrissy said, well, what if we could, like, what would we have to sell it for it to be worth it to you, and to be able to have what we needed to go do something else. And I was like, I don't know. And I threw out a number thinking there's no way we'd be able to get that for the house. And then we sold the house for more than that number. And so that was another thing. Like I couldn't even open my mind to what we already had, what we were literally living in, and the value that was there. But once I did, then wow, look, it happened, and it happened very quickly.
Well, first of all,
Awesome.
I love what you're sharing, and man, I hope that we have time to get all the good stuff, because I'm really loving this conversation. A couple things that you said. I started talking about it. You had enough courage to talk about it out loud, and I think this is really important. You said I was vulnerable. We were vulnerable enough to say we didn't know how we're going to do it. So you're talking about a wellness center, but also saying we don't know. And I guess I'm really feeling connected because, and I won't go into detail about our situation, but we're also looking at acquiring a business or two that we have no idea how to pull it off. It's totally new territory for us, and I think we might have had some similar disparities of feelings about it. And I'm not sure. I think we're in a better place.
Pointing at me if you're listening to this podcast. Well, all I would say about this is we tell our kids when it's your birthday and you make a wish, you blow out, the candle. When I grew up, we were always told, don't tell anybody or your wish won't come true. And I tell my kids the opposite. I'm like, whatever you just wished for, tell as many people as possible, and that will send those little seeds out into the universe. And people will say, oh, I have an idea and I can help. I'm like, tell everyone your birthday wish, and it will probably come true.
And so I love this. There's two parts to this emotional courage that you guys are demonstrating. Because Lance, you're talking about the vulnerability of saying, I don't know. And I think that, this is stereotypical. I'm stereotyping here. I think this is harder for men to do. I think men like to come across as competent and yes, hey, this is my wheelhouse, and and we want to sort of exude I got this vibe.
From my side as a woman, I would say we want to feel safe. We want to feel like there's some security, which I know is an illusion, but we like to have that.
And so I think being humble enough to say, I don't got this. I think I can figure it out, but I don't have all the answers right now, I think is super commendable. And then to what you're saying, Chrissy, about just being open enough to trust in our current worth and capabilities and not feel like we're less than because we don't know yet how we're going to pull something off or make it happen, or just accepting that I'm worthy of it now and I can let it come into my life, and it's not some future version of me that deserves this. The current version of me deserves it and has the capabilities to overcome all the obstacles that are in front of me. And so I just love this duality of kind of vulnerability and courage that you guys are talking about. And I'm wondering, are there any instances of that you can recall where whether vulnerability or courage that you leaned into that felt like they were pivotal or corner turning in this process of moving from building in Midway to acquiring something in Belize?
Definitely the one that comes to mind that was very stressful. We just barely released a YouTube video on this, but the jungle property was not really working out. We were trying to negotiate with the sellers. We kept hitting roadblocks, and so we ended up getting under contract for a beach property in Belize. And we moved here.
They came back actually the same day. The beach property and the jungle property came back and said, okay, we'll accept your offer. So we moved down here thinking, okay, we're going to do both.
Let's do both. This happened the same day. They both came back after months of hard negotiation and said that. And we were like, okay, well, let's just do both. Let's do the beach and the jungle. Like, this is amazing.
And our plan was to do beach first. That they were ready to close quickly, and the jungle we could tell was going to take a while. So we're like, all right, we'll just prolong that closing, and then we'll close quickly on the beach property.
So we moved down here. We were not yet closed on the beach property, but we moved out there. So we took all of our luggage and our 4 kids. We have 4 kids. I guess we haven't, or maybe you guys mentioned that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And
real quick, what are their ages though?
Okay, so our oldest is a boy. He's 13. And then we have 11, 9, and 4 girls. 4-year-old girls.
And we've been here for a year, so they were all a year younger.
A year younger. Down.
Got it. So they were. You started out between ages. Oldest was 12 and youngest was 3.
Yes,
yep.
Exactly.
Get that right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we're at.
So we're
in Belize, but we haven't closed on anything.
Yeah,
you're in Belize, but you're homeless.
Yeah. So we moved to the beach property and we started having contract issues with the seller there. He hadn't really been upfront with us about his terms with the previous sellers, and so we found out, we've already moved everything there. Girls are unpacking, and we find out actually he can't sell the property to us under the terms that we agreed. And at the same time, there was this giant sargassum issue at the resort, which is a seaweed that grows in the middle of the Atlantic. It's, pounding Florida and the Caribbean and Mexico. And the sargassum at the resort was it was disgusting. It smelled like a dump, and you'd have to drive past 4 miles of this to get to the resort. And it just felt so insurmountable. It really did feel like a nightmare come true, what was happening to us at this point. And so stressful, so hard on the kids. And I would say that was a really pivotal moment for us, because here was this dream. We had actually, packed up everything and moved to Belize, and we thought this was going to be our dream life. And then everything was falling apart, and so quickly in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can imagine the kids too. Like, it's one thing to deal with that as an adult, but as a child, like, we've kind of built this up for them. We tell them this is what we're going to do. And then we get there and we're like, just kidding, guys, pack up. Where are we going? We don't really know.
Yeah.
And it stinks.
Yeah.
Like, it literally stinks.
Yeah.
So we for the next 3 months, to your point, we were homeless in Belize. And we were bouncing around.
That's a long 3 months, guys. That's got to be felt so long.
It was so long, and we're in 10 different places. We lived 10 different places during that time frame. And
trying to homeschool for the first time.
Wow.
Trying to hire and train, and then realizing it wouldn't work out with 3 different nannies during that time period, so that we could focus on work and they could help the kids with their schooling. And lots of varied living situations, so not really ever feeling settled. I think actually we got to a point because we had 18 suitcases, some of which were pretty large. This was our whole life packed up into suitcases.
I believe it. For 6 people, yeah.
And so we got to a point where, like, you imagine taking these 18 suitcases out to an island and, taking them 14 miles up on, like, crappy dirt, bumpy roads up to this remote resort, and then, reversing that immediately and taking them to an Airbnb that we were in for just a couple of days, then trying to get them back to the mainland. And we're like, we just can't take 18 suitcases to all these different places because we don't know how long we can stay in each one. So we found a friend here that allowed us to leave our suitcases at their place, and we're like, let's just take what we need for a month, and then we'll just leave the rest of the suitcases here.
I wore the same outfit pretty much every day for like 6 weeks.
She thought she'd packed more outfits, and it just didn't work out that way, and we couldn't really go back and get anything. So I think you had 2 outfits?
Something. It was crazy.
Maybe it was 3, but it was like, whatever it was, she was just wearing the same thing on repeat for a month. And so it's just like, back to the vulnerability thing, what I was going to say is just, I think that you have to be humble enough to do the really hard parts, and not be too good for that.
Right.
We came from a very comfortable life, and there are portions of our life even now that are not glamorous at all, and you have to be willing to do those things to chase what you really care about. And we joke that our life is so funny right now because we we don't cook or clean. We live at a resort. Like a lot of those daily things that everybody does,
Are centralized.
They're centralized. We don't do our own laundry, and we live in 700 square feet with one bathroom for 6 people. And so
you guys know what this is like. You lived on a boat.
Yeah,
and our apartment in New York,
and it had a lot of incredible benefits for our family. But you have a huge yard. Let's say that for you.
Yes, we have a 300-acre yard.
Yeah, it's not. I love that you're saying it's not always glamorous, and that's true. There are always trade-offs. There are parts that are stunningly beautiful and out of this world, and then there's parts that are not. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I'm loving this.
No, I love what you were saying, though, that was really good for your family. I do feel like we're sharing one bathroom, which definitely has its challenges, but I wouldn't trade it. I really wouldn't, because having all of us be so close and really having to depend on each other because we're all we've got here in the middle of the jungle, there's something really beautiful about that. And I have definitely seen a growth in our kids and a strengthening of their friendships and a strengthening of us as a family as a whole.
Yeah, you really get to know each other and you trust each other's limits. You're like, oh, that person just needs a little space. We're not going to bother them. And maybe the only space they have to themselves is their bed. But
yes,
we're going to let them, kind of have that sacred quiet and we all know. And yeah, you kind of bump the rough edges off each other and you learn how to navigate each other's needs and moods and all the great stuff that everybody brings. I know when our kids all came home and we started being together all the time in a small space, it was only after 2 weeks that the older kids started realizing how much value the younger kids brought to the equation. Like, oh, you're actually really funny, and like all this mutual respect grew up around, where before they had started to develop this sort of ageist, like, well, you're 2 grades below me, so you don't count.
hang out with us. Yeah.
I actually would love to segue into that. We said at the beginning we like to talk about, as an individual and as a family, and then also, with adult kids, which isn't the case here, but just how has this affected, maybe go backwards, like how has this, been for your kids or for you as a parent, and then for you as partners, and then maybe just speak to individually, like what this growth journey, which I know you're in the middle of, has been like for you so far.
So it was a really hard transition for the kids initially. The social aspect, especially for the older kids, was really difficult, which we didn't actually anticipate. They weren't super social, like doing a lot of play dates and things like that before we moved. And so I didn't anticipate that very much. But I think we kind of downplayed the amount of social interaction they were getting at school and how that would be completely gone when we moved down here. So that was really hard for them. It kept coming up again and again for several months. Now I feel like they've settled more into like, okay, this is where we are, and we actually have a lot of cool things that we get to do, and they're looking on the bright side of being here and really enjoying it.
The other thing that was a real transitional piece for our oldest, our 13-year-old, is when we put in our tower farms. So we really wanted him to have something that could be his own thing, that he could work on regularly and see progress. And so when we brought these tower farms in, it was actually my parents that were in town, and my dad said to us, this ought to be his. Like, what if you make him the expert on these tower farms, and he knows more than anyone does? Even the groundskeepers and the maintenance team. And so we really kind of shared that vision with him from the beginning, and we just watched him bloom No pun intended.
Yeah.
But he really did just bloom under this project, and to have something to care for every day that really needed him. That was a real turning point for him. And like Lance is saying, the kids are absolutely thriving now. They love it here in the jungle. We have a lot of pets. We've got 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 bunnies. And we got an ATV for Christmas, so we encourage them to get out on the trails as much as possible and take their animals with them. And they're very, very happy now.
Yeah. And I like what you were saying about kind of the close quarters, kind of like figuring each other out and rubbing off the edges. There's definitely been a lot of that that's happened over the last year between all of them, I think, and also for us as a couple, and as our relationships with them and our relationships with each other. And I think that is going to change the trajectory of the relationships that we have as a family for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it has been easy. It hasn't been at all. Those interactions, I think, a lot of times are difficult when you're figuring out how to best love each other, and when people need space, and how to navigate each other's personalities. And there's still some of that we're figuring out, but overall, it's been a huge blessing.
Yeah. I think the other thing for us that's been really important and that we've seen from moving here is it kind of, our oldest is 13. He was in junior high. A lot of negative influences there that he wasn't partaking in, but are still, very close. And I feel like by coming here, we have extended his childhood. We've extended all of their childhoods, really, to be just this very simple, sweet, it's almost like rewinding the clock 50 years and giving them just this idyllic, go to the swimming hole in the afternoon kind of life that has been really fulfilling. Like, that part has been really beautiful for us, where it's like, yeah, we can see all the struggle we went through, but now it feels completely worth it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can totally see that. And you're like, and we get to keep living here, right? Our journey was temporary. We saw that, and our kids came back, and one of them just went into a depression. She's like, kids my age don't know how to just like even interact with each other. They just want to like watch a movie, or we're not going to like create anything together or build anything. Whereas when they were living on the sailboat, it was like, let's invent a dive show. Let's learn how to cook. Let's write a new song. Like they came up with all these like naturally human ways to interact and engage and create. And then we return
rich ways.
Yeah, things that are very fulfilling and satisfying in your heart and mind and connection. And yeah, we returned back to New York City, and it was like, we are very different in what we enjoy and find fulfilling. And now it's so hard for the people we're with to connect, because they're like, whoa, did you see this? Well, did you watch that? Well,
yeah.
I've started feeling that even when we go back to visit sometimes. I'm like, I just don't want to leave the jungle. I don't want to go back, and things feel a little bit
stark,
a little bit dead,
lifeless.
a little bit like,
you
know, here, one of the things we've talked about is just as it gets dark here, we have very limited light. Just because we're an eco resort, we don't have a lot of power. We eat to lamplight every evening, and then we don't have a lot of lights on, and you just feel tired sooner. Like you're just more naturally in cycle with the sun.
Yeah.
And we went back to the States for a visit, and I came back and my cycle was all thrown off. I'm like, what's going on here?
It's easy to stay up till 11 p.m., when you've got artificial lights on, but when you're living in the jungle and you're being conscientious of power, it is a very beautiful, rhythmic life where you go to sleep when it's dark and you wake up. We wake up every morning at 5:30 and it's just starting to get light outside, and that's when the birds are all waking up and making all their bird calls outside. And there's just something so beautiful about that I will definitely miss if we, when we don't live here.
mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, I feel like we've talked about what have been some of the impacts on the kids, and I think it's great for listeners to hear that even if the first 12 to 16 weeks are really rough, it doesn't mean, hey, let's give up. Like, it takes a while to detox and transition. And you can just hang in there and trust that it's good for your human nature, right? And your divine nature to just be in situations that are so alive. And you talked a little bit as how it's impacted you as a couple. If there's more you want to say on that, please do. And then just tell us like how it's impacted you individually.
I'll go on the us impacted as a couple. We had kind of worked together on side projects previously, but we'd never worked full time together. And that's different, especially when your office is your bedroom and the conference room.
The bedroom's everything.
It's everything right now.
Emily's like, yeah, I know. I can relate.
I'm just right with you.
Yes. So,
and it has been for us.
And you're like, we have to level up our communication.
Yes. And that's what has happened. And we're still working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on it even this morning a little bit. But
every day, everybody needs to know every day.
Huh, I thought it was just us that had to work on it this morning.
No, please carry on. This is your story.
There's just like, we have to have I think all the way along we've known that we're both committed, and that has gotten us through the rough patches of like, wow, what's going on here, and how do we work through this communication problem? The way my brain works, I like to dial in on things, and if I get interrupted, I get cranky. And
I'm like, this is so great. I can just talk to you all day long.
She's very collaborative. She wants to talk to me 30 times a day about all kinds of different things. And so I've had to loosen up a little bit, and she's learned to give me a little bit more space and realize that that's how I get things done, is I dial in and I can't be interrupted.
But I think overall, I can't even count how many times we've told each other, I would not rather have, I would, how do you even say that? Like,
I couldn't do this with anyone else.
I couldn't do this. Like, I wouldn't want anyone else for my partner except for you. We complement each other so well on our strengths, and there's such a high level of trust there.
Yeah.
Of like, these are the things you're in charge of that you're really good at. These are the things I'm in charge of that I'm really good at. And so I think in that way, it's been so fulfilling to work together. It's everything I had dreamed and hoped it would be. Just being able to, it is a whole entirely new level of work and output for both of us to have a team of 30 people, 300 acres, hosting 10 different groups from around the world at any given time. It's a lot. And so you have to be able to really depend on each other when you're doing that. There's no other way,
So I think we've leveled up. I think we've also leveled up as professionals because of the interactions that we've had as well. Like, there are things that Chrissy sees in me and understands about me that no one else does. And she's able to kind of say, I think maybe you're approaching that the wrong way, and kind of steer me different than any other coworker or partner that I've ever had in business. And so I've been able to recognize things that I think have been holding me back as a professional that I just wasn't able to recognize before, because people either didn't know how to communicate it to me, or didn't really understand it about me, or were too afraid to tell me. And so that, like, even if we stopped working together and I went and did something else this year, has made me a better professional.
Yeah, for us both, I think, definitely.
Oh, that's so good, guys.
Yeah.
Good for you. Congratulations. And it's inspiring for the rest of us.
You can trust that the feedback is coming from someone who loves you and wants you to succeed, where it might not always be like that in every partnership.
Yeah. And then also, I think it's been really unifying, the path that we are on is an entirely new path for both of us. So I think to be facing that together is, there's a lot of power in that, to just say, yeah, well, we don't really know what we're doing, but we always know we're in it together, no matter what.
I love that so much. We have a tradition. I just want to remind the listeners, like, we talk about this usually annually, but for New Year's, or for our anniversary, which is right by New Year's, we always try to do something new that neither of us have ever done before. You're doing this on a
Mega scale.
but when you do that, it does draw you closer to each other, because you're like, we're being humble together. We're both trying something new, and it unites us, and it keeps us feeling young.
Yes.
I love that. Well, tell us some of the ways that this has impacted you just as an individual. Because I know, especially when your bedroom is your boardroom and your everything place, and your marriage and business and life is all kind of rolled together as one thing, sometimes it can be a challenge to say, where do you end and I begin? So, like, but I'm curious, like, how's this impacted
She's
you?
asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
As a person.
Oh, I personally have struggled a little bit with anxiety since we moved here. This is a struggle that I've had for a lot of my life. Just after my third baby, I had postpartum depression, and that, all the hormonal changes, and that took several years to get back to a good place. And I think definitely taking on the level of responsibility we've taken here and navigating so many unknowns has kind of exacerbated that a little bit. But, also, I think in some ways that's been really beautiful, because it is humbling to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't have everything together. No matter how it may seem from the outside looking in, it's still messy and it's still difficult. And, I still collapse in bed most nights by 8:30 and I'm asleep by 8:30, like just pure exhaustion from all the work. And to be able to lean into this wellness side that we talked about, that is so powerful to us, and a big part of our motivation to do this is taking care of your mental health. For me, I've had to really prioritize my personal mental health to make sure I get an hour of yoga every single day, no matter what, to make sure I'm feeding my body with what it needs and not junk. That's a little easier when someone else is cooking for you and doing all the shopping. But that's important nonetheless, just making sure that you're nourishing your mind and your body. And I have felt the need to do that even more so since we've moved here. So I feel like that for me has been kind of this beautiful tie-in of just because you're living in the middle of the jungle doesn't mean everything is perfect.
And I like what you're saying, that because you leveled up in the amount of uncertainty and challenge that you've taken on, it became even more critical that you take care of yourself in those other ways. Whereas a lot of times you can say, like, oh, well, life is so stressful, I'm going to fall back into some kind of easy crutch way of living. And you're like, oh, that's not sustainable for us. I must take care of myself or this falls apart, right? Like,
Yes.
and so
exactly.
It's not like it's for you, but also it's for everyone, that you keep yourself
Yes.
in a centered, balanced place. So
You articulated that so well. Exactly.
I told Chrissy the other day, like, you are the number one asset of this entire operation. Like, that hour that you take for yourself is the most valuable hour that you will spend the entire day. And I think people often overlook that. They don't understand that bit, right? In order to get out and like give yourself all day long to everyone else, you have to take care of yourself first. Put on your own oxygen mask first, right? Before helping the person next to you. Like, I'm getting emotional about that, but like, if anyone's listening and they're feeling that, like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm constantly giving to everyone else, maybe just stop and be like, what's my hour of yoga every day? What am I going to do to make sure that happens?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually love that you've used that oxygen mask metaphor, because Emily and I sometimes teach about parenting. And as a principal, we say, look, it's the same thing. We've all been on a plane and they always tell you, you have to get your own oxygen mask on first before you can help the people that you love, that you'd give your life for, next to you, you have to put your mask on first. And so you have to be breathing and getting what your body needs every day.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's a beautiful metaphor. So thanks for bringing that up.
For me personally, man, hard to sum up what this last year has meant for me and how much it has changed me. I think in a lot of ways it's been healing from the years of just hard things I didn't want to be doing. I'm doing something now that I love and that I'm passionate about. And yes, it's hard. And yes, there are a lot of things that go wrong regularly. And there's a lot of uncertainty still about where we're headed and how we're going to get things done. But overall, I love it. I love every day. And so even if it fails, even if there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I would never look back on this journey and be like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing for me that I had hoped going into this. That's what I wanted. I wanted something where I really knew that I would love and enjoy every day. And so that's the biggest thing that I've taken away. And along with that has come just more ability to open myself up to even more good, even more of what I want out of life. And so I think that's what it's meant to me personally.
I think we have had so many conversations where we're just talking about how fulfilling this has been, that I feel so personally fulfilled and passionate about what we're doing that, like Lance says, it almost doesn't matter the outcome because the journey itself is the reward.
Yeah, and we still are at it every day going 100%. We're not going to give it any less. If anything, we give it more.
Well, I think
right?
In that way, it's like when you're enjoying the journey, it's almost like you can't help but find success.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll find success. I think another part of what I've learned this year, and our partner Darren has been a big part of this, Chrissy's been a big part of this, is just I have a hard time. I've traditionally been very much like, I can figure this out, I can solve it, I can get it done. And I go inward when there's a big problem. I go inward and then I'm like, I can do this, I can figure this out. And I'm starting now to go more outward, where it's like, okay, there's a big problem, I don't know how to get through this. Instead of just buckling down and getting it done, I'm going to go talk to other people. I'm going to see what other ideas I can pull in, what other resources I can pull in. And that's a superpower that Darren has. Chrissy's much more like people oriented than I am. And so working with them has helped me to see that more.
Wow.
Well, I think it's such
huge treasures.
Yeah, huge treasures. And I think it's such a powerful place to come from when you're able to say, regardless of how this plays out in the end, we're so glad that we're doing it and we're enjoying it daily. Because you're right. When that is your approach and your feeling about it, guess what happens to your likelihood of success? It just, it skyrockets. And so the fact that you are so into the journey, I feel like the results are inevitable. The positive results are it's just a matter of when rather than if.
Warning though, once you do something that you really love and find fulfilling, it's pretty hard to do any other kind of work again.
Pretty hard to go back.
You guys are stuck.
So whatever you do, you know what it feels like, and you'll be like, okay, well, we're only going to do things that we love, because you sort of redefine success. Like it becomes inclusive,
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, before we did this, I was like, this is it. Like I'm never going back. Even before this.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to do hopefully there's a pot of gold at the end of this crappy road.
Yeah.
But if you remember, this was our retirement plan. So
so that's perfect.
That's the rest of forever. And I don't know how much we've shared of our like bigger vision, but our parent company is called mineral, so mineral resorts. And the idea behind mineral resorts is that we are delivering elemental experiences. And I got a lot of what elemental experiences are from the book The Power of Moments by Dan and Chip Heath. If you want to go read that book, it's amazing.
And we'll put it in
But
the
it
links.
talks about,
Oh, okay, great.
yeah, it talks about how you have to manufacture what he calls peak experiences throughout your life, especially after a lot of the built-in peak experiences of life and you start having children. And so that's what we want to deliver to people is experiences that are tied to adventure, health, and wellness, and pull them out of the day-to-day, pull them out of the grind, and let them open their hearts and minds to what could be in their life. And then they can go back and make the changes necessary to pursue what they really want out of life. And so Jade Jungle Resort is our first mineral, and it's a nod to the Mayan people that lived here. Jade was sacred to them. It was a symbol of royalty and wealth. And
our resort is built around a Mayan plaza. I don't think we mentioned that.
yeah, so there were
Cool,
Mayan
very cool
people that
detail.
lived here. Yeah, there were Mayan people that lived here for 300 years, and we know a lot about their way of life because of the archaeology that's been done here.
All of our rooms are traditional thatch roof cabanas. So you really kind of get a feel for what it might have been like living here when the Mayans lived here.
Yeah.
And we're going to include links to all this because people have got to check it out. It's just so beautiful and stunning. So we look forward to sharing it, but keep going.
So for mineral, maybe Chrissy could tell you the future of mineral after Jade.
Yeah, so our next resort that we're planning to build here in Belize, we already touched on this a little bit, would be a beach resort. That would be called Salt. And then we have a few others that are planned out. We've got Copper that we're thinking about maybe doing in Utah. We would love to do some that are like carved into sandstone, kind of like Petra. That would be sand. So we have this bigger vision. This is just the start here, and we'll just keep going.
So we're never going back is the punchline. This is our magnus opus.
You heard it here. And I love what you're saying, that these travel experiences can be transcendent, right?
Yes.
It's not just an Instagram opportunity. It's like really a chance to reset your mind. And, I think I would encourage anyone listening, if this resonates for you, go in the links and set up, a visit. Go to Belize and see what this is all about. And you will be amazed at how your brain and your body will tell you what it is that you really need when you quiet everything else down and just put yourself in a new location, because our environment can kind of fix us into place, like our rhythms and what we say we want or value. Yeah, just get into a completely new environment, especially one like this that's so in nature and so clean, clear, and honest, living none of this artificial stuff, and you will be amazed at what you discover. It can change the course of your life to be on a happier, more fulfilling path.
We need to get you two down here.
Yeah, I'm all about this. I want everybody to sign up and go. Take your whole family.
Yes, it really is a very grounding experience to be here. It is like nothing I've ever experienced. It's towering old growth hardwood. It's a primal jungle, so it's fully a fully mature growth cycle on the jungle. We heat our water by burning kahunas that are gathered from the jungle floor. All of our power is from the sun. We pull our water from the stream. You really do kind of feel like you are coming and just entering into this rhythm of Mother Earth and nature that, even just a few nights here, it could feel kind of stark and empty and lifeless when you go away.
So we don't have Wi-Fi in our rooms. And
We have Wi-Fi in the main
we have
lodge.
Wi-Fi in the main lodge, but we don't have it in our rooms, and it's really interesting the reactions that we get from people, because a lot of it, like, that's part of our why, is to help people disconnect, help them, have a conversation with whoever they're in bed with, and like really just be there. And even for us, the first time coming here, there wasn't Wi-Fi in the rooms, and we even stayed in we have several times stayed in the cabanas, and it changes our behavior. It changes what we do, because we're not connected, we're not on a device, whatever. We're just there with family, and we've gotten pressure to change that, and I just don't want to.
Yeah, no, it's a major selling point to me. And I would also say for anyone listening, when you're looking at an experience like this, just something that I've discovered is that you might be looking at it and saying, oh, well, it's this many days, and you're kind of weighing out the costs. And when you're in an experience like this, every day feels like at least 3 days. So if you're
It
saying,
really
well, we
does.
could only go for 3 days, that's like taking a 9-week trip, or a 9-day trip. Sorry, a 9-day trip. Like you get so much value out of it because time expands when you go into situations like this. So
It's so
just have
true.
to calculate that.
I love that you said time.
We experience the same thing when we take people sailing, both the lack of internet and the connection with the elements and the sun, and just being in a new environment. So everything you're saying makes perfect sense to us.
Yeah, this
Yes,
is
time really does expand. I love that you said that. That has been our experience all the way. It really does.
yeah, in all the best ways.
Yes.
Yes, you do get more than 24 hours when you come to Jade Resort. Oh, I love it. Well, this has been such a satisfying conversation for us. You've given so many gems and just like good insights and information that people can really like mull over and
So
grab a
many
hold
jade
on.
stones.
Yeah, yeah, this will resonate with a lot of people, and they'll know, oh, this is for me. I do want to ask you, like, what would be the advice that you would give someone, because they might be thinking of a completely different idea, like completely different sort of path, but they don't really have a map to get there. What advice would you've been in that situation, so what advice would you give that person who's like, I want to do this big thing that feels beyond me and I don't know how to do it?
I think I already touched on this, and to me it really was completely transformative to go deep inside of myself and believe that I was worthy of having the life I wanted and chasing the dreams that I wanted. Um, that it was okay for me to have that. I think sometimes we don't believe we deserve to have the life that we've always dreamed of, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too simplistic in how I view it, but I really do think for me it all stems back to that, believing you're worthy and capable. And if you can really get to a place where you believe you're worthy and capable, then the rest will just come effortlessly. When you have that foundation to work off of, then you will have the courage to go and do what you need to do.
Awesome.
Can I say something that I think is important about that, Chrissy? Is that it's not enough to feel worthy, and it's not enough to just feel capable. I think
Yes.
those two together are really powerful,
Yes.
because one, being capable requires that you're going to have to act, you're going to have to engage, but also being worthy, you're going to have to receive.
Mm.
And you don't
Yes.
just sit and wait for it to come to you, and you don't just act. It's the two of those together that I think is really, really sublime, what you've described.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. As far as advice, I think aside from the mental work you have to do to just prepare yourself, it it's it takes a community to get things done. And so I would say, just think of a few people that you like trust and respect and that you know would believe in you and have your best interest at heart, and schedule some time to just kind of share and be vulnerable about your big idea and ask some advice, get some ideas. And I specifically say look for someone like that, because I've shared big ideas with people that don't fit that description, and they can be detractors. So choose the right people that you know are going to kind of believe in you and help you along your way. It doesn't mean they won't give you advice to maybe think about it different or steer you slightly in a different direction. But they're going to believe in you and champion you and answer that question, like, how could I make it happen? Right. I love the name of the podcast, What Could Go Right?
Yes,
they can help you
I love that
see what
so
could
much.
go right.
Well, and I would add to mine as well, be willing to fail. Be willing to fail again and again and again, but shift your thinking to see those failures as progress to what you really want.
Yeah, it's just learning.
I love it. I think everyone's going to want to know where can they find you? Where can they follow you? You're showing up in lots of places, and how can they come visit you?
Yeah, so our resort is jadejungleresort.com is our website, and we're on social media at Jade Jungle Resort, and then we also have a YouTube channel that is at chasing.wild_. So Chasing Wild is the name of our YouTube, and we have an Instagram account for that as well.
And the Chasing Wild brand kind of follows more of our family, and then the Jade Jungle Resort is more of the business side.
And it's all beautiful and stunning and delightful. It's really great to see you and your kids and how you're out in the water holes and playing with the animals and progress on the resort as you make improvements. Because I know it's not done yet. You guys are just warming up, I think. And so it's been a delight to follow you there and keep in touch. So please do check out Chrissy and Lance and the Jade Jungle Resort, because it's and we look forward to coming down and paying you guys a visit sometime in the not too distant future.
Yes, we have had this idea actually for a few years that Eric was like, what if we went to Belize for Christmas? And we always call this plan Belize Navidad. And we're like, maybe it's time for Belize Navidad.
We can't pass up a good pun,
Love it.
Plus, there's good sailing there. We're gonna have to do like a jungle resort sailing combo or something.
Yeah, team up with you guys.
We gotta do a trip there.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
This has been so delightful. Thank you so much for sharing your little slice of paradise with us today, and all the treasures that you've found as you've really dug in and done the good work.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being on, you both, Chrissy and Lance. Thank you.
It's so wonderful to meet. You guys just get it, and it's so fun to have spent this time talking with you guys.
Well, and hopefully everyone who's listening will say oh, yeah, maybe it's okay for me to want what I want and go for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how do we end, Emily?
What could go right?
That's the question. Hey, it's Eric. If you want to go sailing with us this year, here's how that works. We have a few more trips planned for this year. There's 2 ways that you can come sailing with us. One is you can book by the cabin, and 2, you can just get a group of 6 to 10 people together. Let me know. We'll check our calendars, find a time that works, pick a place that you're excited about that I want to go to, and we'll make it happen. So reach out and let me know if you want to get a group together. If you want to book by the cabin, here's what you do. Go to theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing2024, and you can get the rundown on what's happening, how it all works. And at the bottom, you can schedule a time to chat with me. I'll answer all your other questions and see if we can find a trip that's a match for you. So if you want to get out on the water, go sailing somewhere fun this year, would love to join you there. Thanks so much.